Okay, LSAT study tips and tools. So this is put together to just make sure we're on the right track with some studying ideas and the right way to go about it. So having a background in teaching, I can confirm that there are wrong ways to study. And one of the things we know is that you don't want to memorize. This test is a long test. You cannot memorize for this test. It is a matter of acquiring a skill. So there's some material that we learn kind of on a I memorized it basis, and we know most people writing this test have an undergrad, so I'm sure you're familiar with that way of learning. And there are some things that when in a test like this that's so timed and so long, it's really about acquiring the skill and the knowledge rather than just having memorized a way to do it. So that's going to take more time. So to do that, what we want to do is consistently put in smaller learning blocks throughout a longer period of time. So that's what we've said here is you want to study in short focused sessions, no longer than 40 minutes, using active recall practice tests, not just reading through notes, building a consistent weekly, small steps, not cramming, and tracking your mistakes or patterns using a mistake journal. And be very aware of your mindset as you learn. So tracking small progressions that gain your confidence in your knowledge is how you'll be successful. And I know there's the belief you can sit down, read it, cram, and do it. That is, for most people, not going to be successful. So instead, what we're really encouraging is that over a longer period of time, be it the full 8 weeks, 12 weeks, or 16 weeks of study, you're consistently building in those 25 to 40 minute blocks. I compare this to bodybuilding or going to the gym. If you go to the gym once, you're not going to see that improvement. But if you go several times over a longer period of time consistently, again, this is the same thing, that consistent piece. And don't think that you won't use this skill in law school. You will. The teachability that's being measured here is what they're looking for. Can you test in this format? And can you read the questions? Law school has a massive amount of reading, and that means you need to be able to read, assess, compile information, and move on. And that's where the outlining part's going to come in. And so there are very much relatable skills towards the way you will study for the LSAT and the way you will be successful at law school. So point of the slide, short study sessions, 25 to 40 minutes, consistently several times a week over several weeks. Track your mistakes and break them down into your mistake journal and learn from every question that you don't get right. And be aware of your mindset that you're building your confidence off of small successes. The LSAT is learnable. It doesn't test memorization. The skills are repeated across the question. So mastering a certain type of question will be relatable throughout the exam and get you more than one question scored correctly. Reading strategies can be learned and improvement can be measured, and your mindset is important as you approach that. Proven methods. So thousands of students have raised scores by 10 to 20 points using structured practice. I don't even know how that is a statement I would say is correct, because I would say all students who have raised their scores by 10 to 20 points do it through structured practice. So it's all about practicing and practicing and practicing the questions and building off of that experience. So pre-phrasing answers and logical reasoning, diagramming now this is saying every game consistently. That's from when we used to have logical games, and we no longer have that. But we still use diagramming, and one of the things you'll learn to do is the way we kind of break apart, and we refer to it as mapping, but you kind of map an answer out. And then blind review, so redoing questions. And again, this is going to mention the time. I don't think it's wise to even worry about the timed portion until you've got the skills mastered. So when you go to train for a marathon, you don't start worrying about your time before you've built up your endurance to be able to get, the number of miles that you need under you. Then you start to worry about your timing. So we're not going to worry about the timing piece of the exam until near the end. When you start to get really strong and your questions are Are you really understanding the building blocks of the questions? Then we'll start to add in the timing factor. But you want to break down the skills to be able to master the questions first. So don't worry about the timing part yet. It does not, what the LSAT is learnable because it does not test memorization. You actually cannot memorize the answers because the questions are not set up that way. So if that has been something in the past that you've been, I'm a photogenic learner, I read the textbook and I remember it, that doesn't apply to the LSAT. That won't be successful here. Is it about thinking? It is about thinking skills, logic, reading, and argument analysis. That means, what that tells us though, that it means that anyone can learn that. It's something that you can be taught to be good at. Skills repeat across questions. So that's the big part here, is that once you learn something, you can answer several different questions because you're actually learning a way to think about something. Example, logical reasoning has reoccurring types: assumption, strength, weaken, flaw, inference, parallel reasoning. Exactly. So you're going to see a lot of things. You're like, Kathleen, this is repeating. And yes, some things are repeating, and that's because that skill does reoccur. Once you master the assumption gap strategy, it works on every single assumption question. So like once you've mastered one type of question, there may be multiple of those questions on the test. Reading strategies can be learned. Reading comprehension, where words process, not speed reading. So even though it's timed, it's not about being the fastest reader. So let's talk about that just for a second. I don't know if we're going to make this super basic, but when we originally teach children to learn and we evaluate their assessment of their reading abilities, it's not just based on the fact that they can say the words, but do they understand what the words are? That's making it really basic. So, when you've got a student reading in front of you and their flow of their reading is great and their pronunciation is great, but then when you ask them about what the story is about, they miss it. Whereas you might have a reader who's much slower, but they are able to recall back to you in their own words what the story is about. That kind of is what this is. This is a very advanced form of that. So you're really training yourself to look for them, to map out what's going on inside of the paragraph that you're reading. And you don't need to understand every word. What you need to understand is to track the structure and the viewpoint. So to be able to do that, you have to understand what that means, right? What are we looking at when we talk about the viewpoint? Whose viewpoint are we talking about? So that's the things we're going to break down and learn. Measuring your improvement. So unlike IQ or talent, and LSAT skills grow with practice, which is what we need to really push forward. Students start missing the flaw questions. After a couple weeks, they practice flaw questions. Their recognition and accuracy improves by about 30%. See, that's a skill. You just built on a skill. The same applies to the timing portion, and pacing gets better with repetition. So it's mastering the LSAT is an acquired skill that you can work on over time, with the most important word is consistency. So to understand that, we kind of need to look at the principles of learning. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is so you can build into your study plan what works best. So you want to build routines and set up a strategy, and you want to use active engagement, meaning writing, highlighting, and putting it into your own words. And you want to do short bursts of new learning combined with review of existing knowledge, and versus do not do long cram sessions. The material doesn't become acquired knowledge quite the same. Time management. This is so important. Learn average per question timing. So as we work towards, this is so once we master this skill, we will work towards the same as when you train for a marathon. You look initially at, okay, now I've got my miles are tracking really well, but now how long am I taking to do a mile? And then you work that out. Well, if the beginning of my run, I'm this many miles, it gets a little slow in the middle, and then I can get my pace going in the end. We're going to do the same thing for you as we start to work out the appropriate timing, because the LSAT is a timed exam. The appropriate timing that you need for each question, and you're going to learn to flag hard questions to go back to them. You're going to learn which questions you can get through quicker. You're going to learn how to set that 5-minute warning, skip and return. So this is kind of all of the things, practice drills. These are the things we're going to put into place eventually once you've mastered the initial skills to help with the time management of the exam. Focus. This is a big one because let's be honest, it's a long exam, so it's really about getting that endurance. So to help you with focus, we can use color coding and highlighting as well as mapping. We're going to use chunking to break things down. We're going to externalize with diagrams. So yes, a lot of the diagramming you're going to see in some of the older teaching materials is done through the logical game section. But I think that diagramming works for some people. Some people don't benefit from the diagramming. I'm one who does. You can use that diagramming as you're working through questions and mapping them as well. You're going to practice eventually under realistic conditions. So, making sure you've got that locked down environment. You're going to let people around you know, or make sure you're in a quiet space. So you're going to mimic the same environment eventually that you will have for the actual exam. Don't stress about that until we've mastered the first part of skills, where you are understanding logical reasoning and you're understanding reading comprehension, and now we're ready to put you under a test environment. Fidget tools, absolutely, to help with your focus. Stress balls, pen, things you can play with a little bit on the side. Sometimes, depending on the style of the learner, sometimes that helps with your learning. Chunking tasks. I'm only doing this game. I'm only doing this passage. Bringing your focus back into doing this task now. I'll do that task later. This, then that. And sometimes white noise or background noise is also important. Reading comprehension strategies. So when you're going through reading comprehension, you want to skim the passage for its structure, not for details. You want to note the tone, the viewpoint, and the shifts in the argument. And you want to use a passage mapping, and we're going to go through that in detail. So you're going to see right now where you're really just learning kind of the basic tools and skills that you're going to use as you assess each of these areas. So answer big picture questions first, and then look at details. So this is just a real quick look at a method that you will use to attack a reading comprehension, but we're going to break it into really learnable pieces for you and go much deeper as you work through the other slides. Logical reasoning strategies. Okay, again, you're going to identify conclusions and premises. We're going to look at the answer choices. We're going to look at common traps, strengthening versus weakening, extreme answer choices, out of scope distractors. So what I'm really trying to let you know right now is both in reading comp and in logical reasoning, there's specific strategies to attack these questions that once you learn them, you will see your success improve. Practice and review. That's the key to this whole thing, is consistently practicing and reviewing, taking small parts of the test and doing them, then taking full-time sections, and really looking at those tests as an assessment place, a starting place. Where am I starting from? What do I need to work on most? Reviewing every wrong answer. Not reviewing a wrong answer is a missed opportunity. So you want to, why was it wrong? Why did I make that decision versus what would have convinced me to make the other decision? Identify weak sections and then work on them. Don't just redo your stronger sections, and recycle and redo. Your not games; those aren't in it anymore, but the passages to help you with building. So resources. The LSAT prep tests are available. Another good one is the Khan Academy. Also does LSAT prep, that you have access to those tests. We also email you out through LINK practice questions. And then of course there's all kinds of books available that you can get. And then of course tutoring services. Also, don't forget, you can email along with your subscription comes unlimited emails to ask questions and get additional pointers and support. And then also check out on our YouTube channel the videos that break things in to help you with, if you're stuck on a question, go and look at the YouTube channel and see if there's a video specific to what you're stuck on, or even better, send us an email and we'll send you the link for the video. Okay, so remember, final encouragement, it's learnable. You're not supposed to master it right now. We're going to master it together. Improvement comes from practice and review. Stay consistent, stay calm, use tools that work for you. If there's something in the tools that we're suggesting that just doesn't click for you, don't worry about it. Move on to the next thing. Make sure you do the first pass with a visual diagram, second pass, explain it out loud, and a third pass, write a quick why note in the mistake journal. This repetition through multiple styles cements the learning in. So this little teacher note is actually something I would do as a teacher with you, but as an adult learner, if it's a pattern that you put in place each time you work through a question, I think this also helps you to really solidify your learning. Study environment. 25 to 40 minutes focused work, 5 to 10 minute break. Distraction blockers, um, noise canceling headphones. I like to put a TV show on, believe it or not. It plays in the background because for some reason, then me listening to a TV show conversation while I study, I've done it all through law school. It doesn't get me wandering off into conversations that might be going on in the rest of my house, I guess. It helps me for some reason. Sometimes you don't want any noise. Designated study zones, I definitely use that. I use my desk, but sometimes I need to go use the kitchen table or another different space, a coffee shop. Movement breaks, I think, are so important. Get your workout in there. Go for a walk before you sit down to study. I think that really helps as well. Organization and tracking, mistake journal. Make sure you get yourself a mistake journal and you put down your wrong answers and you organize those into sections and things, and you constantly are using that mistake journal to look at it. It's a good spot to start from as well, when you go to sit back down and decide to study again. Color coding note system, green for strengthening, red for weakening, blue for assumption, that type of thing. Getting into that as you study every day will help with your timing when you go to do the real exam. Checklist, daily, weekly goals. And so, for example, it might be you're going to complete two questions under the logical reasoning section and one question under reading comprehension. And then you're going to review for mistakes. I love a whiteboard or sticky notes for being able to do diagrams and reminders. And also being able to scratch out things, like to map through things and do mapping of my answers. So do you love my toolkit? Logical reasoning tools. So in logical reasoning, we want to underline the conclusion to anchor your focus. We want to rephrase the answer before reading choices. It prevents distraction by wrong answers, right? So before you read your answer choices, you want to think to yourself, what could the right answer be? You want to highlight trigger words, therefore, how, sense. Throughout the learning material, you're going to find there's a list of these, and you're going to, after you practice consistently, you're going to see really quickly the first thing you do is kind of find these words. And then you're going to sort by question type. Practice all flaw questions in a row to build recognition. So yes, eventually you want to test your ability to identify them, but initially you want to let's work on flaw questions. Let's work on assumption questions so they become familiar to you. Reading comprehension tools. So passage mapping strategy. One sentence summary per paragraph. Margin notes. So in the margin, abbreviations, M for main idea, A for author's view, O for opposing view. Chunk reading, stop every 3 or 4 sentences, paraphrase them. Active reading techniques, circle tone words. Fortunately, sadly, controversially. These questions will set the tone for the paragraph. Blind review, re-answer questions untimed after the first attempt and compare with the original. So again, this is just giving you an overview of some tools we're going to dig deeper into. Don't worry as I go through these quickly. Be like, oh my gosh, don't worry. You're gonna get more notes on these. You're gonna get more, support with this. But it's just giving you the vocabulary so you start to know these are some strategies and tools we're gonna put in place to help you be successful. Mindset on test day. This is important. We're gonna talk about this right now so that you can get yourself in the right frame of mind throughout your entire studying time. So the first thing is, a fixed mindset is a problem. If you don't believe that you can master this test, then I promise you cannot master it. If you believe you can master it, we can do this. So that picture right there is so important for you to take a look at and really have a heart-to-heart with yourself and say, do I believe I can do this? Because I need to set aside anything that tells me I can't. Reframe mistakes. Each wrong answer is data for your future correct answer. So the more wrong answers you get is just setting yourself up to get more correct answers. Do not worry for a second about a wrong answer. That is just learning material. Visualization. Picture yourself calmly solving under timed pressure this question. So visualize, how am I going to work through this? What does it look like? What's my mapping look like? Sleep and hydration routines protect executive function. You cannot do this being exhausted and burnt out. So you need to put in place some self-care and make sure you're eating well, you're drinking well, you're getting good sleep. Test day kit. Snacks, water, layered clothing, simple checklist, your admission, depending if you're doing it home or because you can still do it online or if you're doing it in a testing center. And we'll go in more in a deeper dive to those details later. Mindset. The LSAT rewards patience, resilience, and process. And I'm going to tell you, as a person who's currently in third year of law school, that is what law school rewards as well. So learning these skills now are definitely transferable. Your mindset determines whether you will spiral when you're stressed. So you need to identify in your body that feeling of stress before it's happening and then put in place how you're going to address that feeling so that you can stay calm and use the strategies that you've learned in this program. With the right mindset, the test becomes less about fear and less about intimidation, and it becomes more about problem solving things with confidence. So it's my goal that out of this training, you will learn to problem solve with tools and strategies that give you the confidence to master this test. So you want to shift in your mind from it being IQ to it being a trainable skill. Okay, mistakes equal data, not failure. We kind of said that earlier. I'm repeating it because it's so important. Every wrong answer is a clue about how the test works. Instead of feeling defeated, you need to ask these questions, and this should be part of your mistake journal. Did I misread the conclusion? Did I fall for an extreme answer? Did I skip diagramming a rule? Growth mindset, mistakes equals stepping stones, which is your growth to the correct answer. Read that one again, because this is so important. Okay, now this is my little metaphor with the upside down mindset. Practice under stress, perform with calm. So, train in a timed, noisy, imperfect condition makes real tests easier. On test day, reframe your nerves as excitement, same as body chemistry, and inhale for 4 seconds. So that whole breathing thing to calm your nervous system down. So, in the beginning, we don't need to worry so much about the timed piece, but know as we start to advance, we will work more on making sure that you identify that stress is not causing you additional problems, but giving you the energy you need to be focused and have the confidence to master it. Focus on progress and not perfection. Absolutely. So each day you're going to improve a little bit. There will be days where you plateau. I trained for half marathons and marathons, and there were days where I didn't even want to show up to go for a run, and then there were days when I rocked it, and you just the more days I showed up, the more days it got better, and the more things I overcame, and the closer I got to the goal and then to the finish line. And it's the same thing with getting this LSAT behind you, and it really is, you're going to use the skills to learn how to master the LSAT are similar ones you will learn or you will use and apply when you're in law school. So you might stay at 152 score for weeks or months, and then suddenly break into a 158 after mastering, and this is mastering a game type or mastering a question type, because we no longer have logical games. But you're going to track your trends and not single scores. So do not let yourself get down because you did a test one day and scored a 160 and thought, okay, I'm going in the right direction, and then you decided to do another test and you were back down to a 155. Don't sweat it. We'll fix it. We're going to learn from wrong answers, and we're going to grow your confidence and your skills and tools, and you're going to master it. Don't fight your brain. Work with it. Listen to it. Short bursts of study are better. Externalize everything, using diagrams, color coding, checklists, and celebrate your small wins. For example, it says I nailed sequencing games. You're not going to nail sequencing games, because here's a bonus for you. Those don't exist for you anymore. So instead of nailing sequencing games, you are going to nail your reading comprehension flaw questions. Resilience on test day. Accept that you will hit tough questions. No matter what, there will be harder than other questions. Your mindset is going to be skip, strategy, not failure. So you're going to come back to it if it's too hard, so you don't lose your confidence. And we're going to practice that. And then you're going to come back to it and approach it with a mapping of how you're going to get through it. Don't let one hard passage or question derail the whole test. Don't throw a test over 1 minute. Okay. Affirmations for the LSAT prep. This is a learnable test. Every mistake makes me stronger. I don't need to be perfect. I need to be consistent, and I can train my brain to focus. You got this. You absolutely have got this. We have a growth mindset. This is about a growth mindset. All right. This is important. So we're going to talk a little bit now about learning style and study tools. So this is where you dig in, and I don't know if you've already done this in the past, maybe it's familiar to you, but there's different styles of learners, and I do discuss this a couple times in this course, and I think it's a really important thing that you dive into this now. And the reason isn't just to get through the LSAT, but in front of you, you have law school, 3 years of law school, and you need to know how you learn so you can be efficient, because there's a lot of learning that's going to take place inside those 3 years. Then you're going to pass a bar, and again, knowing how you learn is going to help you be more successful in that. So are you a visual learner? So visual learners thrive off of charts, different colors, color coding, mapping, sketching things out, doing like a mind map of how things think, knowing the terms, looking at key strategies and tools. Okay, so color coding, diagrams, mind maps, flowcharts, sticky notes, whiteboards, slide decks, or visual study notes. So do print off the notes we email you and make notes along the side and even flip them over, make more notes. It says diagrams for logical games, but I would apply that as well. I do diagrams for reading comp questions and even when I'm working through a reasoning question. So I think that I do diagrams on everything. Auditory learners. So auditory learners learn best through hearing, explaining, and discussing. So that's where this is the learner that's going to do really great in a chat group, because you learn something, then you got to talk it out loud with people. So that's where you want to reach out through our Facebook group or through YouTube. YouTube's another good one, and we have the YouTube website, our YouTube page for our members and our office hours. And the other good thing for auditory learners is teaching it back. So even if you're teaching it back to yourself, or that will help you. Study groups and tutor sessions, like we said, recording and replaying explanations, and podcasts or lectures. The auditory learners are the ones that I'm recording these voiceovers for on all of our teachables, because that really helps you. And if you look to the YouTube videos that we do, that will be another good one for auditory learners. So here's just a map of the different learning styles: visual, auditory, kinesthetic, reading, writing learner, and then multi-mode module. So many learners use an assortment of those different things. And I know at different times for me, different parts, reading is a tough one for me, because when I read, my attention does not stay on the page. So I do a lot of looking for key terms, looking for key strategies, and reading that way, taking things apart, making notes as I read. I look for videos that support things that way and writing things out. Doing a lot of my own notes as I go. So hands-on, movement-oriented, needing to do, not just read. So how are you going to do that with the LSAT? It's a written test. No, we have flashcards, using a fidget tool while you're learning, standing up. I have a treadmill that you can walk while you learn. That might be something that works for you. Remember, this is a take it and leave it, like what works best for you. Walk and talk method, pacing while explaining to yourself. When I jog or walk, will also sometimes play, the lectures while I do that. Time drills such as sprints. So, for example, being able to do your questions under time, that might be something that works better for you. Reading, writing learners. So this is the mistake journal. Now listen, everyone needs to be using the mistake journal, but definitely the reading writer learners will be like, that makes so much sense to them. Rewriting explanation from the prep so that's where you're making notes on the notes that I've sent you. Summaries, 1-sentence summary for like reading paragraphs. Everyone should be doing those. A list of question types, strategies, maybe you're mapping it out into a table, maybe you're drawing a mapping chart even just so you can see all the different key concepts, and then practicing. So some people, like we said, learning styles and study tools are joint together, so they have a variety of, they kind of take from different ones. You'll see the word ADHD here. Don't panic. I mean, I definitely fall into the ADHD category, and as someone who worked for years with special education programs in the elementary schools, it's not just for kids. Many adults have high functioning ADHD, and in fact, you can harness it, and maybe it's one of the reasons you're, someone who wants to go into law and a career that it requires that many different faucets, because it really goes well with ADHD. So you may combine some of these things: visual and verbal, auditory, writing, kinesthetic. So we really put these things here to give you the suggestions, so you kind of dive in and say, okay, what style learner am I? What works best for me as I learn? And if you evaluate these things now and figure it out about yourself now, you will use it all throughout law school. So again, the teaching note: first pass, visual diagram; second pass, explain it out loud; third pass, write a quick why note in the mistake journal. Repeat this as you go through each question. Study tools. So how to set up the mistake journal. So this is where we learn a little bit about how to do this. So you can choose whether you want to do it in, are you a reading writer that needs to write it down on paper? I have special pens I like. That works for me. Or are you a Google Sheets? Because you can certainly do it that way too. So you're going to set up columns, or you're going to set it up in your book where the date, the section of the type of the question type, was it a flaw, strength, assumption, your answer, what you picked, what the correct answer was, what was the error, how did it occur, what lesson did we learn from this, and then when we redo it, what would you do differently? So this just tells you kind of what you're going to have as the basics about each question and how you set that up. And then here's an example. Now, I would say too, when it says your answer and the correct answer, I would put more information there, because remember, you don't want to have to go back and find the question each time necessarily, but you want to kind of be able to use this for a little bit more direction. But this is kind of your basics of where you want to start. You can build off of this as well. And then how to use it weekly. Review mistakes at the end of the week and look for any patterns. Are you always having trouble with flaw questions? Are you constantly struggling with assumption questions? Drill based on patterns. If you miss 6 flaw questions, what should you be practicing? Flaw questions. You want to redo old mistakes, so cover up the answers and try them again. Don't ever think you can't redo a question you did wrong. In fact, I encourage you to redo that question several times until you get the confidence on it. And the reason is you probably won't see that same question, but what you will see is your ability to identify that question, and identify the type of question it is, and identify how you got the right answer. Why it works, especially for ADHD students, please don't be offended that the word ADHD is there. But the reason it works is because it takes it out of your head, puts it onto paper, and there's no clutter. It's not getting lost along with other thoughts. It turns something vague, that I'm bad at this, into specific goals of, okay, no, it's not that I'm bad at it. I just confused strength with weakening questions, or I just chose, I didn't identify the point of view instead. So things like that. What we need to do is not look at I'm bad, but more what was the actual mistake that was made, so that you can identify it next time and choose a different way. It creates a personalized LSAT playbook over time. Exactly. So over time, your mistake, you're going to see how you progress, and you're going to see what you need more focus on. Reviewing your journal builds confidence, because like I just said, you can see, hey, yeah, remember when flaw questions used to be so hard and now I'm mastering them? Make it short and simple. Don't write essays, just quick notes that you can skim. Your brain will resist long, complicated systems, but a 2 or 3 line reflection per mistake is sustainable. So you can flip back and be like, oh, this question is like that one. I remember it in my mistake journal, and you can kind of use that recall piece. Mapping your answers for smarter study. So how to map. Smarter, not harder. Okay. Why mapping works. It keeps your brain focused, less mental clutter. Now, I love mapping. I will read something, and inside my brain I've got it all floating around, and then mapping out the key terms and the definitions and seeing that connection. I remember in property law, the only way I got through property law was mapping. So you're doing a visual memory of how this is going to work best. Especially powerful when you take those thoughts out of your out of your mind and out of your kind of that silent, when you read and you're just silently repeating it, when you put it onto the paper, it solidifies it for you, and it gives you kind of that recall of a visual where you watch the thought kind of grow. And rather than it just being something you know about that you've read, you're now taking it to a new layer of understanding, because when you map something out on paper, now it solidifies and it becomes your idea, not just something you read about. So highlight key elements, not everything. In logical reasoning, you put your premise in blue, conclusion in yellow, keywords in red. And later in our specific lessons on these things, we will advance the understanding of the premise, the conclusion, and keywords. In reading comp, you might look at your author's opinion in yellow, opposing view in green, transitions like however, although. You may underline those. And you can come up with your own system that works for you. You don't have to use these colors. So, key terms. Create a running list of LSAT terms you must recognize. Absolutely. And you might keep two journals. Maybe you've got one journal that is more your mistake journal, and maybe you've got an outline going of things that you're learning as you go. Flashcards, sticky notes to test yourself. Absolutely. So this goes how we're going to talk about being able to short clues so as you're going through, because it's timed, we don't have time necessarily to rewrite passages as we kind of are doing in the beginning. So eventually, as you really master the systems, you're going to start to I see logic games there. We don't do logic games. As you start to master the systems, you're going to be able to kind of use an abbreviation. So you see where it says note C doctor's diet change. That probably is a paragraph that you're reading where you believe that the author's main point is going to have to do with diet change. You're looking to kind of, okay, what's the problem? What are the limits here? So this is kind of how you're quickly going through and being able to kind of condense things down and follow your own notes and kind of visually map out what you're looking for, so that when you go back to select from the answer choices, you have some key concepts that you followed throughout. So reviewing your map. Another good reason to map it is that after you get your answer, if you didn't get the correct answer, you can go back and look at, okay, how did I make that decision and where did I map wrong? And you're kind of going to look to circle in your mapping what you missed or what you got wrong, because that's going to show you when you start to read that question the next time what you should have been looking for. Okay, so mapping and highlighting key terms, quick notes, and visuals keeps you organized and sharp under pressure. Build it into your daily practice so it's automatic by test day. If you're a visual person, in a notebook with lots of light bulb type moments overhead, like giving yourself kind of drawings to keep yourself going along if you're a visual learner. So the important part to this too is I want to note it says build into daily practice, automatic by test day. I know of students who've said, oh yeah, well, I'll do that for the test, but I'm just trying to study it now. Don't do anything, don't change anything on test day. You want to be working consistently under the methodology, the method, the system, the tools that you're going to use during the test, so that they become so instinctual to you that they're just naturally there. It would be like saying, I'm going to run in a new pair of running shoes on the marathon day. You just wouldn't do it. We don't change, and we have ran in our same shorts, same clothes for days, or like training, practice up to that day. You don't throw something new in. I don't even like a different pen on my badge number. So, for a marathon, I want anything that's going to rub you the wrong way. And it's the same thing when you're on your test day. You don't want to add new things in on test day. That's going to potentially give you, tip you off